Okay, I'm sorry that I'm being so slow in answering these questions and posting it. For whatever reason, my laptop chose today of all days to be super slow and to need the C drive defragged and all kinds of crap. So, anywho, um, that I'm having a hard time keeping these video answers kind of succinct and to the point because they're just such awesome questions. I just want to ramble on and on and on. Anywho, this next question is from one of my dearest friends in the whole entire world, amazingly talented glitch DJ, by the way, Jeremy Henry. So his question is, I'm just going to read the whole thing to you and then I'll address it. In terms of a civil rights movement, there was a push for LGBT for visibility. I've felt progress was hindered because you can hide being gay more so than a skin color, for example. Do you feel that the trans community has had a large part in visibility for this scenario since visibility is intrinsic to living an openly trans lifestyle? Also, do you get a lot of, I understand being gay, but trans is ... I get the feeling there is somewhat of a divide between the two, even in the LGBT community, and if so, what can be done to unify? I'm going to start by answering the last part of that question. You stated that you feel there's a divide in the LGBT community, and you would be correct. Unfortunately, there is quite a void or gap between the LGB and the T. And I think that's true for a few reasons. The first reason being that the LGBT and all of the other letters that also go in that an acronym that I can never remember, so I'm sorry. It's not that I'm trying to deny anyone's identity. I just have a bad memory. But all of those letters stand for sexual orientation, sexual preference, and transgender is gender identity, which is completely separate from sexual orientation. So I think that's one of the reasons there's a divide. Another reason there's a divide, and of course, as always, I'm just speaking from my personal experience and what I've observed, and what I've dealt with in interacting with the LGBT community. There's actually a lot of hostility in the gay community towards trans people. I've experienced a lot of hostility from lesbians. They're angry with me. They feel like I've sold out to the patriarchy, that I'm transitioning because it was too hard to be a lesbian and I just want to give in and have that white male privilege. They think I'm secretly a sexist misogynist and that's why I want to be a man. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. And of course, not every lesbian feels that way. I've also had wonderful experiences in regards to me being trans with lesbians. But there are some lesbians. There's a group of lesbians that are really hostile towards trans guys. And there's a group of gay men that are really hostile towards trans women because they feel like trans women give them a bad name and they're going to make, society as a whole think that all gay men want to be women at heart. And the root of that, I feel, is just a lack of knowledge about the trans experience. Well, I mean, because obviously they're not trans, so they don't have a full understanding of what it is like to be transgender. And I feel like that a lot of that could be rectified with just some education and some open and honest dialogue. So yeah, there is that divide. As far as the trans community playing a part in visibility, that's kind of an interesting question because there is a large group of trans people that live a stealth lifestyle, and by stealth I mean that once they've medically transitioned, they fly under the radar. They live their life as a male or a female, whatever the situation may be, and they don't share with people that they were assigned a different gender at birth. So in that case, you know, there's no trans visibility. They move through the world as however they identify, whether it be heterosexual or gay, whatever. They may have queer visibility because they identify as queer, but there's no trans visibility in a case where a trans person lives a stealth lifestyle. In my case, I obviously am very public and open and outspoken about being trans and about my trans experience. So, I mean, clearly in that case, I would be lending to the visibility. But, you know, like I said, that's an interesting question, because there's a lot of us that go stealth. So I don't think that that all trans people lend to visibility, but yeah, some of us, we do play a huge part in visibility. For trans people, I don't like for people outside of the LGBT community to make assumptions about LGBT people based on my trans experience. Unfortunately, a lot of them do confuse being trans with being gay. A lot of heteronormative people that don't have a lot of experience with our community assume that, say, for example, a butch lesbian really wants to be a man, or an effeminate gay man really wants to be a woman, and that's not true at all. So that gets kind of frustrating. That confused visibility, I guess, would be a good phrase. Yeah, so I guess that kind of answers the questions. That was kind of a hard one to answer, because there were several different questions in one question. As far as what can be done to unify, like I said before, I think it's just going to be a matter of educating, of trying to initiate open, respectful, kind, compassionate dialogues with the members of the LGBT community that don't quite understand where us trans folk are coming from. And even that can be challenging, because like I said, some of them are really hostile about it. But I believe in educating with love and kindness and compassion. So even if someone is screaming in my face that I'm a misogynistic pig and they hate me and they want to see me die or whatever, you know, I just smile and say, you know what, that's okay. I love you, regardless. So we'll get there. As a community, I have hope. I believe we'll get there. And, you know, we've already accomplished so much as a community. I do feel like a lot of times trans people get left behind because we're a little bit more of a taboo subject. So, you know, and I kind of understand it's real tempting to say, well, okay, we'll deal with the trans issues later. Right now we're just going to focus on getting, you know, equal rights for, you know, LGBT people, and then we'll deal with the trans later. You know, a prime example, there was a march in Washington, and the Human Rights Campaign actually asked trans group, or I can't remember if it was an individual that was holding up a trans flag. They asked them to not display that flag because they were worried about being too offensive. So that's just kind of one example of some of the dynamic in the community with trans people. So I know that was kind of scattered and all over the place, but I hope I kind of answered your questions, and if I didn't, let me know. I'll try again. Claw. I love you, Jer.